Welcome into PurpleAquatics.com. I'm Skyler King. As always, you can email me, Skyler at PurpleAquatics.com. You can follow me on Twitter at SkylerPrep. Boys preseason preview here in Illinois, and first meets taking place this weekend. We do have some inter-squads going on. You can probably see some results on SwimCloud. Some teams will post them on their website and get a feel for what they might be dealing with. But this is a year where there's only 3 teams that I'm really confident about, that are going to be able to put relays in the top 6. And so I really think 4th through 10th in the top 10 could be pretty wide open. When we go through the predictions, we've got teams that aren't the usual suspects that are going to be competing for top 5, top 10 spots this year, which should make things pretty interesting. And, it's going to be a little like this girls' meet, but really the top teams, there's really a separation. Well, we kind of have a situation where there's 2 teams, there's a separation, then there's 1 team, and then there's a separation to everybody else. And so that's going to lead to 2 things. One, a lot of opportunity for teams to jump up and get half the top 6 spots in relays. And then also, what it should create is a really fun head-to-head showdown for the state title that, relays could be swinging back and forth 12 points apiece, and what looked like even if it does look like a 20, 30 point meet potentially, it could swing the other way just on relays. And I really think that what we're going to see ultimately, and those 2 teams, if you've done a modicum of research on this season, everyone knows we're talking about the defending state champion Stevenson Patriots and the Hinsdale Central Red Devils. I'll go into this a bit more after the predictions, but I think there's an argument to be made that these 2 teams would, and there's the interesting thing is there's an argument because of Brandon Jong last year that Stevenson might have been just as good, if not better, last year. But with improvement, they're going to be better in other ways, I'm sure, this upcoming season. But that these 2 schools, these 2 teams this year specifically, I should say, probably win state in any other year in Illinois history. Now, that doesn't make them the 2 best teams ever, because you got to compare it to the eras and the dominance of some of those teams. Like I would say that still the best team that I covered is the New Trier team from 12. Where they just ripped the entire state apart and went double top 6 in several individual races. What I would tell you is that the state is better now. And so you're not going to see one school do that necessarily. But Hinsdale has better depth than that New Trier team. In terms of, because they go 3-4 deep in some races. Now, the 500 free in the backstroke, they're not that good. I don't even have them scoring points in the backstroke. I don't have Stevenson scoring points in the backstroke, because one thing I did do, because I thought it was so obvious with Stevenson and Hinsdale, that I generally try not to do in the preseason picks, is I did move their kids around to different races than what they swam last year, because it just makes too much sense for their lineup. But the rest of the races, I have Hinsdale scoring in every event other than the backstroke. I have Stevenson scoring every event but the backstroke and the 500. So, I mean, that's even teams that you think about being dominant state champions don't always have that, where they have someone scoring in that many races. That's one of the things that made that New Trier team so great. But even even their breaststroke was weak relative to what you think about a lot of those other races. They still scored, but one thing that we'll talk about at the end is we'll see if we can do a comparison at the end of the season, since that's just, we're talking about in the time of me covering high school swimming. We'll kind of do an all-time best team comparison at the end of this season, but we'll get into the predictions here. Medley relay. I'm still giving Stevenson the nod. Here's the thing with Hinsdale that's really tough to just sort out is the versatility. I think Stevenson's biggest problem is that they don't have as many guys as Hinsdale does that are top line relay swimmers. And so the advantage Hinsdale has is they're going to get more individual swims that are potential scoring swims, because again, like a guy like David Cohan, who is only getting to swim the 50 because they need him on all three relays. You know, I just don't think that, especially with losing Brandon Jong off relays, that they can afford to pull Cohan off and still compete with Hinsdale. Now, they could beat almost anyone else in the state, most likely, in any of the relays except Hinsdale if they pull Cohan off. And maybe that's something they consider, is basically giving up a relay to Hinsdale, or multiple, thinking that they can still get second place and get a second individual swim out of some of these top guys. I've got Hinsdale Central second. It'll be interesting what Hinsdale does, because there was rumors going back to girls season that Bertulis, who's their number one returning backstroker on paper, may not be around for sectionals in state, and so they need a backstroker. Could be I believe it's Noah Priest, went 51 in the backstroke at this meet right before the season, and so they could plug him in there. And he'd obviously have to sacrifice potentially an individual race, which would still be worth it if he's the backstroker. The other thing that they could potentially do is that Vidar Karlbaum went 23-0 in the 50 back before the season. If Hinsdale wants to come out and make a statement right off the bat, they put Karlbaum in the backstroke and keep Gilbert on the end of the medley. And then I think it's basically becomes a coin flip of a relay, because that puts Karlbaum basically equal to Wyrocki, which Wyrocki and Zhang were, and I mean Zhang obviously was a difference maker too. But if you look at the splits, Wyrocki was probably the biggest reason why Stevenson won the medley last year. In comparison to Hinsdale, since we're talking about these two teams now, that was their biggest difference maker. Now Karlbaum basically isn't now as Wyrocki in the 50 back, so that's a wash. Zhang's going to be a little better than Bay, most likely. He was better than him last year. Zhang had an amazing offseason. Nothing that's happened with Colin Zhang leads me to believe that he's anything other than the best breaststroker in the state still. Although, if someone's going to prove us wrong on that, or me wrong, I guess everyone can have their own opinion, it's going to be Josh Bay. But then Stevenson did lose Zhang, their flyer. And so they do have a very good one in Diego Rosario Freitas, someone that I have scoring in the butterfly. But Brandon Jong was legitimately elite in the 50 fly. And so any drop off at all just to like merely good is going to be maybe a full second slower just in the fly leg for Stevenson. Now, maybe they make up for it with the improvement everywhere else, but Hinsdale also returns their back three, and add on the fact that they can be a second and a half faster or so in the backstroke, really makes it a possibility of Hinsdale winning the medley. Anyway, thought it was worth breaking that down because the relays really could swing this meet. New Trier, third. And again, this is where, people are going to shake their heads. But if you go back and look at state meet results last year and what people have returning, there's not a ton of options. I have Maine South fourth, St. Charles North fifth, LT sixth. Again, Maine South went 134 and are all back. The skepticism there is their Maine South. And they haven't performed well at state since about the 1930s. In the bottom six, I have Bennett, Waubonsie, Highland Park, Naperville Central, Friend, and OPRF. Highland Park is a school you're going to hear a lot from in these preseason predictions. In the 200, Nolan Miller, Champaign Central, Camden Taylor, Joey Countryman. Three guys returning from the top six. I have 1, 2, 3. Nolan Miller is the number one returner. And so I'm giving him the respect for now. But I'll tell you right now that Camden Taylor might be the most talented freestyler in the state when you think about the height at 6'7", 6'8", and the type of the type of pulling of water that you can get with that wingspan. I love the upside of Camden Taylor from Rockford East. Nolan Miller, I said Champaign Central, Countryman Rebus. Nate Harris, Hinsdale Central. So this is the beginning of the shuffling of the lineup for Hinsdale. Nate Harris, bottom six in the IM last year. He just went 139 in the 200 free a couple weeks ago before Thanksgiving. Because of their unbelievable depth in the IM, I have actually... while we're at it, I have both top 12 IMers for Hinsdale not swimming the IM this year. And we'll talk about that in a second here. But Harris, I have him fourth. Nobody else has broken a 140 that I've seen. At least someone might have popped it in these last couple weeks, and maybe I just missed it. Aiden Music, New Trier, Johnny Farber, Stevenson. Farber is the piece that Stevenson was kind of without. He was there, but he was hurt. If Farber makes it to the state meet healthy this year, he's going to be heard from in the top six twice individually. The bottom six, I have Ward Wilson from New Trier, Kyle Algrim, St. Charles East, Noah Priest, Hinsdale Central, Peter Nolan, St. Ignatius, Simon Minkowski, Schaumburg, Gabe Frank, Glenbrook North. The IM. I think this could be a fun kind of three-way battle. I've got Jaden Gamilla winning the IM from Metea Valley, Colin Zhang, Stevenson second, Brady Johnson, West Chicago third. Those three guys were all in the bigs last year. And it was kind of, I'm not sure what happened to Gamilla in the final. So Zhang ultimately finished ahead of Gamilla, but Gamilla returns with the best time, 48 low. So that should be a fascinating battle. Josh Bay, I have fourth. Again, this is again why the Hinsdale reshuffle. Bay, the sophomore, only got to swim the breaststroke last year, just went 149 in the IM before the season. Wairaki from Stevenson, I have fifth. Jaden Heinlein, Friend, sixth. Heinlein, it was weird what he swam last year as a sophomore. This guy is legitimately good from Palatine Friend, and he should be double top six this year. They just need to switch his events. He's won the breaststroke last year. He's 50.1 in the backstroke. Bottom six, Kian Lamb, Waubonsie, Henry Guo, Hinsdale Central. Again, the Hinsdale kid just went nuts right before the season. 152 low for Guo in the IM, which allows not just Harris to move, but also for Jeffrey Hu to move out of the IM. Dominic Mazurek, Maine South, Sean Wanner, Marmion, Charlie Buffton, New Trier, and William Watson, Cary Grove rounds out my IM top 12. 53, Nikola Tadic, Jacob Drazen, Niles West, Lake Park. They're the top two returners. They're clearly a cut above last year than everybody else. Vidar Karlbaum, so I have third. Again, we discussed him with the medley. This kid was at JV2 conference last year, and he just went 20.8 in the 50. Now, I have David Cohan and Andrew Gilbert right after him, and then Max Listina from New Trier. Cohen and Gilbert were both 20.7 last year. The reason I have Carl Baum here ahead of those guys is the upside. This guy has tremendous raw speed. He was the fastest Illinois kid in meters this summer. He came over from Europe just last year, and everyone will tell you that his turns aren't great, but this guy's got real speed. And so flip turns is one of those things where you're going to constantly get better at him because you're doing them so much in practice over here, because now you're practicing in yards. And so I think the things like the start and the turn, he's got more room to improve than these other kids, and that could really make a difference, especially in the 50 free of all things. As I said, David Cohan Stevenson fourth. He just missed the top 6 last year. Andrew Gilbert fifth, Max Listina sixth. In the bottom, Jacob Gramer, DeKalb, Kevin Obachi, Highland Park, Stephen Grude, St. Ignatius, Bryce Loger, Conant, Dima Kondrashev, Neuqua Valley, Nate Affolter, Whitney Young. Diving, as always, I did my best to really just take the top returners. Diving's an event where freshmen can really make an impact, as we saw last year with Matthew Yuan of Glenbrook North, who I'm giving the nod to at the beginning of the season. Not trying to be bold here, as I never am with diving. So Matthew Yuan, Glenbrook North, first in diving. Noam Colback, Highland Park second. Danny Silverstein, Stevenson third. Holden Weller, Oak Forest four. Ethan Paul, Libertyville 5. Ben Mears, Friend 6. Sandy Kaser, Hinsdale Central 7. Alex Bradshaw, Highland Park 8. Matt Adler, LT 9. Wyatt Wellahan, New Trier 10. Sam Morris, Deerfield 11. James Young, Evanston 12th. In the fly, talked about Wyrocki not swimming the backstroke. Michael Wyrocki is my state champion in the butterfly. After the state meet, this kid goes to senior champs, goes 48 in the fly. I'm pulling you from the backstroke. Not only is the fly kind of have a vacancy because of graduations compared to the backstroke, it also is way better for Wyrocki to help out free relays. Jeffrey Hu, Hinsdale Central second. Kevin Obachi, Highland Park third. Nolan Dietz, Pontiac fourth. Those 4 guys are all 49s or better. Kane Kriz, St. Charles North, and Nikola Tadic, Niles West, rounds out my top 6. In the bottom, Ada Music, New Trier, Emmett Harmon, OPRF, both returning scorers from last year. And then I mentioned Rosario Freitas from Stevenson. I have him 9th. Henry Guo, Hinsdale Central 10. Cohen Osborne, Evanston 11. Gabe Frank, Glenbrook North 12. That Henry Guo pick could be about one of 3 guys between Henry Guo, David Gow, and Nogus Bertulis. They all went between like 50.2 and 50.4 right before the season. And so I can see any of those guys getting the second spot and all of them scoring if they get it. 100 free, Camden Taylor is the pick. Joey Countryman, Johnny Farber third. Noah Priest, Hinsdale Central fourth. The 100 free is an event I can see people moving into because you barely have any sub 46 guys running around. And so that's why Noah Priest is up there. Noah Priest just won 45. The fly is not that tough. A lot of times the fly in the 100 is where people can bounce back and forth. I potentially, I guess, someone from the 500 could move over to the 100. Nolan Miller, maybe, but I got him winning the 500 free. And so the 100 is going to be very interesting, an event that you would normally think. Nikola Tadic, who I have at the bottom of the top 6 of the fly, could potentially swim the 100. Kevin Obachi, same type of thing. Have him third in the fly. He could potentially give the 100 a try. You just don't know. But there's no slam dunks that where it's like someone's a 45 low, and so they're clearly going to move. We're all talking about guys that are 46 lows. Anyway, Jeremy Mueller, Harlem, Jacob Gramer, DeKalb is the rest of the top 6. Jacob Drazen, Lake Park, Brody Marseille, Hinsdale Central, Ben Rocks, Huntley, Bryce Loger, Conant, Jack Curtin, Stevenson, Andreas McClea, Northside College Prep is the rest of my top 12. Again, potentially, they could throw Cohan, Stevenson that is, in the 100, and see, and, try to get a double top 6 there. That would mean that Curtin is then potentially an anchor for the medley. Those are the type of things. That's just a much more dramatic change than the things that I did to Hinsdale Central's lineup, or like moving Wyrocki from the back to the fly. 500 free, Nolan Miller, Champaign Central, is the clear number 1 returner. I've got Nate Harris from Hinsdale Central second here. The 500 is kind of weak. Basically, nobody past the top 2 returners have ever been under 30. Nate Harris didn't swim the 500 free at the meet before the season. But I'll tell you, he was at 139 last year. If he was, he would have swum the 200 free. And he was 434, 433 last year. I can't believe he's not going to break 30. And he's a more talented swimmer than Josh Fujimoto of Normal Community, who is the number 2 returner. And it's one of those where if the race is close near the end, I have to pick Harris. Anyway, the rest of my top 6 is Ward Wilson, New Trier, Kyla Algram, St. Charles East, Lucas Baccaro, Barrington. Baccaro, to me, is the big wild card here. He really didn't post a faster time that I saw between state and now, but he was just a freshman last year. He's from Barrington. That's a distance factory. If you told me that Lucas Baccaro won state in the 500 free this year, I would not be surprised. Because obviously the improvement that you can make from freshman to sophomore year is so much greater than it is any other year, unless you just have a giant physical maturing in your later high school years. But it's most likely to happen between freshman and sophomore year, and so Baccaro has it all in front of him here. Alex Parkinson, Neuqua Valley, Graham Wilson, New Trier, Parker Chan, Hinsdale South, Tyler Bardak, Marmion, Ryan Anselm, Barrington, Charlie Tracy, Ignatius is my bottom 6. 200 relay. I've got Hinsdale Central winning. They just don't have any weaknesses. Stevenson has got relay legs to replace. Hinsdale does not. They're adding Carl Baum to the mix here. I would think, again, I've got Carl Baum and Andrew Gilbert both going 3 relays. That may or may not happen. It all depends. That's one of the things, competition for spots for Hinsdale, I don't think should be a problem, because if they feel like they really want to get somebody on a relay, that just frees up a top guy to potentially go swim another individual race. Because while you would say, well, you don't want to take your top guy off the relay, again, as we discussed, we were talking about taking, Cohan off Stevenson's medley. I just don't, until proven otherwise, the other teams around the state don't have the horses to make Stevenson and Hinsdale Central pay for doing it. Now, maybe New Trier, if Hinsdale Central and Stevenson, it would never get to this point, I don't think, would cannibalize themselves enough that New Trier is going to win 3 relays. New Trier doesn't have a ton of sprint-free depth. I think the medley might be their best relay, or the 400. The 400 will be good as well. The 200 in particular should be their weakest of 3 relays. I still have them third because, one, they're New Trier. If they need to fill holes, nobody has a better chance than New Trier, especially if you're taking Hinsdale and Stevenson out of the mix this year. But I still think that Hinsdale's 5th, 6th guy would be the 2nd or 3rd guy on a lot of relays this year. The rest of the top 6, Highland Park, LT, Maine South. Again, as I talked about Maine South before, you don't see them popping up a lot in these individual races because there's a lot of kids from a lot of different schools that don't have the supporting casts. But Maine South has 4 or 5 good returning swimmers that were all relay contributors last year. Bottom 6, St. Charles North, West Chicago, Ignatius, DeKalb, Neuqua, Glenbrook North. In the back, Brady Johnson, West Chicago, I think is a slam dunk winner. And then it's pretty open. Sean Wanner from Marmion, Quinn Collins, LT, Jaden Heinlein from Fremd are all guys that I think are going to break 50. Simon Mikowski from Schaumburg and Cohen Osborne from Edwardsville are 5th and 6th for me. But again, I think basically after that top 4, you could shuffle up any of the rest of these guys. Bottom 6, Lubomir Popovic, Maine South, William Watson, Cary Grove, Nada Falter, Whitney Young, Dominic Mazurek, Maine South, Danny Castle, Highland Park, Jonathan Wang, Naperville North. Breaststroke. No surprise here, Zhang, Bei, Gamia, top 3 returners. I think that's an easy pick. Here's where I have Jeffrey Hu, moving from the IM. He's a 55 breaststroker. I think this is a slam dunk. There's nobody that's been under 56 in the state other than those top 3, but who has? Alex Lake in Naperville Central, Kian Lamb, Wabanzi is 5-6 for me. Bottom 6, King Chris, St. Charles North, Bart Kubis, Maine South, Ethan Hoon, Wabanzi Valley, Andrew Flight, Hersey, Drew Rosa, Riverside Brookfield, Brendan Smith Bennett. But again, those last couple spots, especially after Kane Kriz, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, wide open for someone to come grab those spots. We're talking about guys that aren't breaking 58 for the most part there. Final relay, Hinsdale Central, Stevenson, New Trier. Again, Hinsdale, in all honesty, if their guys improve from last year, with what Carl Baum's done, if they load this relay, I would think that Hinsdale's going to be pretty close to breaking 3 minutes. They at that meet, they weren't all swimming for the same clubs, but I think they added up to about 3:04 without relay starts. And so Stevenson, even with getting Farber back, is going to have a big hill to climb to try to beat Hinsdale in this relay. The rest of the top 6, West Chicago, LT Ignatius. Bottom 6, Marmion, Maine South, Glenbrook North, Highland Park, OPRF, Wabanzi Valley. So what does that look like for the top 10? Hinsdale Central, 223. Stevenson, 189. But again, if you swing relays, if Stevenson wins the free relays instead of Hinsdale, that like my picks are, that's a 24-point swing. And now it's basically a 10-point meet. If Stevenson, granted, here's the issue for Stevenson with the medley. I think they got to win the medley. So I would not pull Cohan off if I was Doug Lillidahl. He's also, a way better swim coach than I could ever be. But just thinking out the math here, if he agrees with me, which is always a dangerous proposition, that his free relays are second best. Even if taking people off those relays cost them to lose to New Trier twice, that's only 4-point difference. But if both times it frees someone up to get a top 6 somewhere, if they find a way to get like 2/5 somewhere by taking guys off relays, that's like a plus 15 right there. And at that point, we're really within the margin of error. So I hope without getting too cute and really cannibalizing themselves, because obviously we want big, fast head-to-heads, especially in relays, where we know that Stevenson and Hinsdale Central are the 2 best teams. However, because they're so head and shoulders ahead of everybody else, and they're going to look at it and go, well, I could pull guy X off this relay, still get 3rd place, or whatever. Even if it's 4th place, it's still net gain if that guy gets top 6. in whatever they're swimming. So now, I mean, it's a gamble. However, when you have this kind of head-to-head match race, I just think you have to at least talk the risks and rewards of it out. I just think it's a unique situation that we haven't seen in years, because the other big head-to-heads that you think about weren't in this dominant position where the top teams after the third really dropped off and are really just not on the same level as these top two teams, to where there's really not the same threat. You talk to coaches and they're trying to figure out, I really want to get this guy or this girl an extra individual swim, but I'm nervous about catching a 7th place in this relay. I just think when you put pen to paper and write out the splits, that these two schools wouldn't be at risk of that, putting their 5th guy on a relay if it's a free relay, or putting their number 2 in a race. Now, I don't think that's true of the odd stroke races. If they pulled Wyrocki off the medley, I think things could get a little hairy for them. Wyrocki's that good. If they pull Colin Zhang off the medley, same deal. And I honestly don't know what they have behind Freitas in the fly, which in and of itself makes it dicey. Obviously, they lost Zhang. There's already going to be a drop-off. How could there not be? He had just one of the best fly splits we've seen in state history. And so, but the freestyle, there's an opportunity there. Do we think Kohan can go top 6 in something? That's part of Hinsdale's advantage here too, is because obviously, like I said, I have Curtin scoring the 100 free. What is there an event other than the 100 free that Kohan could realistically go get top 6 in? Definitely nothing that I would think is a lock. Even the 100 free is no lock. It's definitely possible though. And so the versatility of this is one of those, like, this Hinsdale team would be tremendous in a college meet format, because they have, again, they basically have 4 152 or better IMers. They have 4 50-point flyers or better. They have 4 56 breaststrokers or better. It's just that type of overwhelming depth that allows them to, and because their second and third guys are so good and they can score, like we talked about in the fly and the IM, it allows some of those superstars to not have to swim that extra individual race to beef up the relays. So, my number one hope is that Hinsdale Central breaks the state record in the 200 free relay. If Stevenson does it, great. But I just think Hinsdale's most likely based on the sprint free talent, because it is the one record that's still on the board from the tech suit year. It's a Glenbrook South double suited 122.15. It's the only state record relay of the 3 that I have memorized, because it's just been stuck in my craw for almost 15 years now. For one reason or another, every other record has been broken. Most of them were broken very quickly after those records in 09 were set. And I think the only record that was not broken in 09 was the breaststroke. And so, fast forward, we've broken every record again many times over for the most part since then, but not the 200 free relay. Hinsdale almost did it a couple of years ago with Franco Reyes and Donovan Lehman and Cole Grossans. This is another opportunity, and it's a potential for a relay that really is not going to have any weaknesses. Last year, Nate Harris, the gamer that he is, came out of the 500 free to swim the 200 relay. He was also on the 400 relay. really tough end of the meet for him. Similar, although not quite as tough probably, even though there's no break, but it's a 50 in a relay compared to when Spencer Walker went 500 free backstroke 400 relay. But their talent this year makes it so Nate Harris can still be on the 400 relay, but he doesn't need to come out of the 500 just to swim on the 200 relay, because Karlbaum is in the mix this year. And so, along with Priest and Marseille and Gilbert. So I'm really excited to get this season started and see how fast all these teams are going to go, but especially Hinsdale Central and Stevenson. And what I'm going to do as part of the season wrap up is I'm going to do this comparison two ways. We talked about that New Trier team that was so dominant with Grodecki and Mangan and Reed Malone, Sam Skinner. They broke the national record in the 400 relay that lasted about 2 minutes before Caleb Dressel and those guys got a hold of it down at Bulls. But I'm going to do the analysis both ways. We're gonna bring Stevenson and Hinsdale back to that state meet and put their state meet times into that meet, and we'll bring New Trier forward and see what the result would be. It's just a kind of a fun exercise to do, and really the only method we have to compare these teams to each other, other than just the utter dominance that New Trier had over the rest of the state at that time is to me why they're number one with a bullet in the best teams that I've covered to this point. But again, fun exercise to undertake at the end of the season to kind of put a bow on all the things that these two great teams are going to do this year. This weekend, I really wish if someone would put a legitimate, standardized with the normal high school events, invitational on the books, either of these first two weekends, you would get me there in a minute with a decent field. I get stuck going to Hinsdale Central dual meets these first 2 weeks, first with Naperville Central, next week with New Trier, because I just can't abide relay meets. And I don't mean like New Trier relays because everyone's swimming regular events there. I'm talking about 300 butterfly relays and 12 by 25 freestyle relays. Not only because it doesn't give you really any good idea of a team's strengths and weaknesses, but also because half the time when I go there, 4 different teams claim they won. One year I went to Barrington, the timing system didn't work the entire time. So that's a meet that takes place next weekend and has a decent field that I have vowed to never go to again. Anyway, Naperville Central at Hinsdale Central this weekend. Again, it'll be interesting to see what Hinsdale does, but this is more of a research mission on Naperville Central. We know how great a coach Mike Adams is. What we don't know is this team going to have any talent? They weren't great last year, and they graduated all 4 members of their 400 relay, for instance, and so it'll be interesting to see what they've done in the off season. And again, we talked about it for those of you that have daughters and sons and might have been watching during the girls' season. What impact did COVID have on not just last season, but this season, and how much slower it became in the lack of depth in the state? And so I think we're gradually climbing out of it. Hopefully by next year we'll be totally clear of it. But that could be one of the reasons for kind of this power vacuum where Stevenson and Hinsdale are just head and shoulders above everybody, and New Trier then is also circling the wagons for a trophy. But I've got I'll run down the rest of the top 10 now as I've gone on this diatribe. New Trier 126 for third, 52 points. I had them 63 behind second, 189 Stevenson, and 52 better than LT at 74. Highland Park 73, Maine South 69, West Chicago 60, St. Charles North 51. And then I have Fremd and Marmion tied at 33, Champaign Central and Waubonsee tied at 32. It's going to be fascinating. I'm convinced there's going to be a team or two that kind of rises from these ashes and really shakes this up. But at the same time, I think it'd be fun for teams like Maine South and Highland Park to be battling it out for a top 5 finish. Two schools from the same area that really don't get heard from in swimming very often, along with 4 programs that we hear a lot from: Hinsdale Central, Stevenson, New Trier, and LT. I mean, even LT, a lot of this is just leaps of faith, and that Coach Rodriguez is going to find 3 guys to go on relays with Quinn Collins. I think there's an argument to be made that Collins will go 2 individual races. However, I've got them with 3 top 6 relays. If they think that that's possible, I can still see him just going the backstroke. But Collins is definitely a guy that I only have going 1 individual race, but I can see him scoring in the IN or the 100 free if he ends up going them rather than a 3rd relay. And again, there's definitely other kids like that. We talked about Stevenson and Hinsdale Central primarily that we're talking about with the 3 relay deal. So can't wait to get after it. Hopefully we get a minimal amount of snow throughout these months, so it's easy to get to these meets and take them in. Next week, we'll be recapping any meet results that I can find, in addition to the traditional Red Weekend that seems like I've gone to more times than anything else to kick it off. Naperville Central at Hinsdale Central to start the season. Again, Stevenson's hosting an invitational, decent field. It's just a relay meet. And so I just can't put myself through it. But I'm sure that the results there will be quite impressive. We'll just have to do some math and break it down to see what all the times might mean. Next week, week 1 recap, looking ahead to week 2 here at PubAquatics.com.